Okay, we are live. I'm just going to take 1 second to double check that we're streaming. We always have to do this to make sure that everyone can see us. So if you're in the IRC channel, please let us know that we are streaming, and then we'll get started. Okay. 1 second, folks.
Okay, we are live.
Oh, I can hear myself. That means we are streaming.
Check that we're streaming. We always have.
Okay.
Okay, we are live. I'm just going to take 1 second.
1 second, folks. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Ubuntu Town Hall. My name is John O'Bacon. I work at Canonical as the Ubuntu Community Manager. I'm delighted to be joined today by an exquisite panel. We've got Mark Shuttleworth, who is the founder of Canonical and Ubuntu. We've also got Christian Perino, who is the VP of Mobile, who leads our mobile business and strategy, and Rick Spencer, who is the VP of Ubuntu Engineering. So on this session, we're going to be sharing some interesting news about Ubuntu and our mobile strategy. We're then going to talk about some interconnecting points that relate to that news, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A session so you can ask your questions about that news too. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark Shuttleworth, who can get us started.
Thanks, Jono, and hello, everybody. Yeah, so the big news today is that we are announcing our first two manufacturing partners. These are two great companies. We whittled down the field from quite a large range of companies that we've had detailed conversations with to these two companies. And I'll talk just a little bit about why we picked these two companies to be our launch partners. But it's a huge milestone for us. It's a huge milestone for the team. It's the fruit of a very large number of conversations with industry that we've been having since we launched this mobile initiative only 1 year ago. So it's kind of incredible to me. But only 1 year ago, we announced Ubuntu for the mobile world. And in that time, any number of teams have pulled off small miracles. You've been able to see the development progress of the platform yourself. Many of you have participated and helped us shape it into something pretty damn extraordinary. You've seen carrier engagement with now 16 carriers. And behind the scenes throughout all of that has been this series of conversations with manufacturers. So BQ in Europe and Meizu in China. And I want to talk a little bit about why we've picked these companies in particular. Now, we are engaged with quite a broad list of manufacturers who are very excited about Ubuntu, in particular because of the large show of support that we've had from carriers. The carriers are the manufacturer's biggest customer, so they're super excited by anything that is getting carrier attention. We chose these two companies because they both have a successful track record of breaking into entrenched markets. So in Europe, BQ is a very exciting manufacturer. They've grown from nothing to 1.5 million phones a year that they ship. And what we love about them is that they've been really good about identifying markets that they can enter, about designing phones in Europe, and they're super exciting in terms of the trajectory where that they're following, that they even want to be manufacturing phones in the West, something that nobody else has done for a very long time. But the way they're tackling this is really smart. So because they have this track record of kind of on a guerrilla basis going into tough markets and really taking share, we thought they'd be a great partner in Europe, where we need a company. Europe's a very established market, a company that can bring Ubuntu to people who are passionate about Ubuntu, to people who can be the seed for a growing ecosystem and a growing community around Ubuntu on hardware. In China, Meizu are a very exciting company. They're the leader of the new pack, the sort of brat pack of phone manufacturers in China. They are specialists in bringing Android phones to market that they differentiate. They hit the limits on what they could do with that strategy, and was super excited about engaging around something like Ubuntu. You might have noticed that there's been a fair amount of speculation around Meizu and Ubuntu. That's been, quite specifically a strategy to try to gauge levels of interest in Ubuntu for their market. And I'm delighted to say that they're very excited to be working with us. We're very excited to be working with them. We think they're a manufacturer that in China really resonates with a young audience that wants something fresh, that wants something new. China's a big market for us. We have a big carrier on board publicly. We have other carriers that are supporting our efforts privately. And we wanted a local manufacturer there who had the right spirit, who could get in and kind of crack some tough nuts together with us. So two great companies, two feisty companies, two companies that are a great fit for Ubuntu. I think next up, the key thing for us to be talking about is apps. And so I guess Rick Spencer is going to be taking us through a little bit of a status check on where we're at on the app front. Over to you.
Sorry, I'm just going to unmute Rick. Rick, you need to unmute yourself first of all. The joys of Google.
All right. Anyway, hey, thanks, Mark. So I'm really excited about this announcement today. And I'm also really proud of the results that we've been getting with service providers and application developers in supporting the phone. Whether it's service providers bringing their content like really front and center in a scope, people bringing HTML5 applications, porting them over to Ubuntu, or people writing new applications with our native SDK. And I think their strategy really shows how it's paid off with the level of support we have from, the Weather Channel, Grooveshark, Twitter, Facebook, like all these partners and services, way too many to list here, already on Ubuntu today, like already available. So I think just want to touch on like the three-part strategy that we had and why some of the reasons I think it's been successful and invite people to bring their services onto Ubuntu. One is the scopes, like if you have like that rich content or a service provider, we really focused on making it easy to bring a really rich user experience, really front and center. Like other platforms, if you bring your services over, bring your content, your users have to like find an application, dive into an application to find your services. But if you just implement a very simple API, then your services are really front and center on Ubuntu, like right center stage. Now, if you already have an HTML5 application, we took the strategy early to focus on really mainstream HTML5 technologies. So whether it's rendering HTML5, executing JavaScript, we can pretty much guarantee that your HTML5 application is going to work just fine on Ubuntu. And we also already have full support from Cordova. So if you already have a Cordova application, or if you have an application that's HTML5 and you want to use Cordova to add offline support in Ubuntu, that's really easy too, and it's already, all the support's already there. But of course, we also have a native SDK, comes with a really rich IDE, it comes with a rich toolkit, GUI toolkit, platform services, everything you need, and it's integrated with our App Store. And I think our App Store is really cool, not just because of the many applications that are already in there, but the way we run applications is in a very secure way. We call it application isolation. And this means that if you bring your service over to Ubuntu or bring your application over to Ubuntu, users can try that service with a high degree of confidence that they're going to have a good experience with it. But I think one thing that is unique in Ubuntu is that we, at the end of the day, we let end users maintain control of their application permissions. And so I think it creates a really rich place where users can discover your content. So I want to put in a plug for developer.ubuntu.com. So if you are a service provider or an application developer and you want to implement a scope, bring your HTML5 application over or start a new native application, I invite you to visit developer.ubuntu.com and you'll find everything that you need to get started. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rick. So we're going to hand over now to the guy who's been making a lot of this happen, Christian Perino, our VP of Mobile. As I mentioned earlier on, Christian is driving much of the business strategy around mobile. So Christian, I believe that you're going to talk today about the CAG, the Carrier Advisory Group, and differentiators as well. And you'll need to unmute as well first.
That's a key cue. Thank you, John. And hello, everyone. It's been an outstanding year since just under a year ago we announced Ubuntu for Phones at MWC. We very quickly established industry support, both on the OEM side and on the carrier side. For that reason, we created the Carrier Advisory Group. We basically created a forum that allows operators to not just have an inside track into the Ubuntu development process, but to actually influence it, which is unprecedented for them. That Carrier Advisory Group counts 16 members, people of the caliber of Verizon, T-Mobile USA, Everything Everywhere, Telstra, Vodafone, 3, Portugal Telecom, and several more. And with a number of these, we're actually working closely to develop propositions to launch in their markets. We will announce those in due time. What's really catching on for them, Rick mentioned how unique our user experience is. We put content front and center. What that means from a user perspective is that for the first time, they're departing from the tired app icon grid and get a chance to discover and engage with their favorite content and services in a very fast and very rich way. We've achieved that. What that means to an operator is that, keeping in mind that these guys have invested heavily over the past few years in 4G and LTE networks, those business models require higher data consumption and service consumption. We've developed a platform that's perfectly aligned with that strategy. On the OEM side, who have been hindered by the limitations of creating differentiated experiences on alternate platforms, they now have an opportunity to actually differentiate where it counts at the service and content layer. And again, this goes back to the scopes and the UI that Rick referred to. These are propositions that are unprecedented for them. They're, in the case of OEMs and operators, business model game changers. And that's stuck and resonated with them very quickly, so I couldn't be more pleased with the level of traction that we've established with them. Jono, over to you. On mute.
Wonderful, thank you, Christian. And just to wrap up before we get into the Q&A, I'm going to just provide a little bit of guidance about how people can get started if you want to write applications for Ubuntu. So in the last, as everybody said, it's been an intense year since we announced Ubuntu for smartphones, and there's been a tremendous amount of community interest. We've spent a lot of time building the SDK. We've been building developer.ubuntu.com. We've seen a huge amount of engagement. As one such example, we have over 4,300 developers who are actively using Ubuntu for smartphones. And this is resulting in hundreds and hundreds of applications that are coming into the store. If you want to get started, you can write your applications either in QML or you can write them in HTML5. And as Rick mentioned earlier on, our HTML5 support provides the opportunity for a HTML5 app not just to be constrained inside of a browser tab. It provides an opportunity for it to feel more native, to integrate more natively with the system. So QML and HTML5 apps feel slick and they feel sexy on an Ubuntu system. You can go to developer.ubuntu.com and you can find out how to get started right there. It provides instructions for how to download the SDK. There's full tutorials there. There's full API documentation. And then we've also got a stack of new content that's coming to the website. We're going to be having additional API docs. We're going to be having additional primers about how the platform runs and how to harness different parts of the platform as well. So we're seeing just a tremendous growth as we kick off our app developer ecosystem, and we couldn't be more thankful to the many pioneers that have been getting our applications into the store. So let's get to arguably the most interesting bit for our viewers, which is our Q&A. This is very, very simple. So beneath the video stream that you're looking at right now on ubuntuonair.com, you'll see a chat channel. And in that chat channel, there's lots of chatter going on right now, and you can ask your question quite easily. You just type the word question in uppercase, and then your question, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to pick out the ones that are probably going to be of most interest. We're not going to be able to get through all of them because we've already had a load come in, but I'm going to pick out the ones that are most interested, that have been most repeatedly asked, and then I'm going to channel them to our different panelists here today. So type the word question in capital letters and your question. We'll get through them in the next, we've got 20 minutes, so let's get through as many as we can. So the first question, I think this is probably going to be best for Mark, who's leading our strategy with Ubuntu. Nitrub asks, why should I prefer Ubuntu to other operating systems? Essentially, why Ubuntu?
Thanks, Nero. Those of us who are passionate about Ubuntu can give you any number of different answers. I think the key question is, which new platforms are you going to spend time and energy on? If you're developing an app today, then there are some platforms that you have to target, iOS and Android. And the key question is, which new platforms do you want to be part of? I think Ubuntu is the new platform that gives you the broadest range of ways to express your interests. If you want to participate directly in the platform, you can. And we now have tens of developers who don't work for Canonical, who are just passionate about mobile experiences, like what they see so far, that are diving right in and helping to build Ubuntu. We've had that obviously for years on the server and on the desktop, but now we have it on mobile too. And in a sense, on mobile, it's even more exciting because we're defining the cutting edge. We're defining the convergence vision. So if you want to be part of that, building a platform that we think will compete with iOS, compete with Android, then you get an opportunity to do that. If you want to build apps, then there are more different ways to build apps. You can create a scope, for example, if your app is really about surfacing content, and that helps your content surface directly to users in their home screen. Or you can build an app in HTML5, and if you do it, you're building using exactly the same tools that you would to target Android and iOS, and it works perfectly on Ubuntu. So it's a much better HTML5 than a different one that won't work as well across multiple platforms. And if you want to do a native app, then we give you native application development. You can do it in C++, you can do it in QML, you can do it in sort of compiled JavaScript with QML, or you can do it in Go, which is a really cool new language for native application development as well. So just as in terms of new platforms, Ubuntu is one that really gives you the most options in terms of how you express yourself, how you engage. And obviously it's got a phenomenal, happy community that is already riding and moving at pace. So to be part of that is a lot of fun.
Fantastic. We have a question from Mr. Brooks that I think is going to be probably best directed towards Christian. The mobile partners BQ and Meizu, when are they likely to release their Ubuntu phones? What tier will they be? So are they going to be expensive phones or low budget? And what hardware are they likely to run on? So can you give us some more details, Christian, about more specifics about those particular engagements?
Sure can. A lot of these details are actually being worked out, but let's answer the last one first. Both companies are very well known to develop high-end type devices, high-quality devices at accessible prices. If you look at some of their price ranges that you see in the market today, they're between the $200 and $300. So I would expect something similar for the initial phone ranges for Ubuntu. But again, we're still in the process of defining that. We are likely to see these devices in the second half of the year. We are focused on developing the campaign and fleshing those out right now. We're also focused on making sure that the very first experience that we deliver is an experience that people will want to keep in their hands. So we prioritize that over speed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Christian. So we've had a number of questions here, not specifically related to BQ and Meizu, but I think Rick is probably a good person to answer these, about the Nexus 5. Some people have asked, a group of people have asked, why are we not focusing on the Nexus 5? So we have these, maybe Rick, you could provide some context around why we pick the handsets that our developers focus on, and why the Nexus 5 is not part of that selection.
Sure. Well, I guess first of all I would say we choose in Ubuntu engineering really to take a deep focus on a very slim set of hardware, because that is really the main value that Canonical can bring to the Ubuntu community, is solving some of the deep problems in hardware enablement that are general. You need a reference platform for that. And then also solving some of the deep problems that are experiential, like that we solve with Unity and scopes and everything. But we consider ourselves to be a community open source distro, and we work in concert with a lot of community developers who then provide the breadth, right? So we go deep. That lets other people to be able to pick up the breadth. So in fact, I think the Nexus 5 is actually fairly well supported today by a set of community contributors who have picked up our ports program. We have a wiki for porting. A these particular developers who are interested in this device hang out in the Ubuntu Touch IRC channel and get help from us. So that has been our strategy, to go deep on selected reference platform and then work with the community for that breadth. We already had Nexus 4s, so it made sense for us to stick with that for going deep. And also, I think there's something valuable in working with the slightly less performant hardware when we're doing that deep enablement. If we're always using the fastest hardware, I think there's a potential risk that we will lose track of those little optimizations that are necessary to capture the breadth of hardware. So,
thanks.
Yeah, so just to support that, I think this is what the relationship between Canonical and our broader Ubuntu community is all about. We are able to go deep, and we can get deep access to the manufacturer, but we can only do a certain number of things. And so what we have to do is we have to have a great reference on the phone and a great reference on the tablet that show what the thing is capable of when everything is humming. And then an open process that lets community members essentially take that as widely as possible. And that's worked. We're now supported on how many devices, Jono?
There's over 40. There's over 40 completed ports, and I think over 45 in progress as well. So there's a lot of work going on. Yeah.
What I think we could do is we could make it so that it's the same install process. So you just say, phablet flash your device, and it could then tell you, hey, this is community supported, or this is deep, and then folks can make their own mind up. And I think that will encourage community members to participate in contributing more devices and getting those devices to a better state of enablement. So I think the team has made the right call. The result will be faster code on the Nexus 5, and fully support it.
So related to that point, Mark, I think something that so we have Egghead on IRC who has a related question. Is this a community venture or a business one, and how will it interact with and survive in a market-dominated cell phone landscape? So how is this combination of community and business venture going to be successful in such a?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Sometimes that sort of question is asked by people who are trying to poke holes in what we do. So corporate competitors will say, well, you can't trust Ubuntu because they let community people participate in the project. And sometimes projects that are pure community, which are great in their own respect, say, well, you can't trust Canonical because they have a big company sitting right behind them. And the reality is, I think that's our great strength comes from this duality, this fact that we do have community that is able to participate directly in the platform, even though it's an enterprise Linux. I think this is the stuff that you can't do with with Android, and you certainly can't do with iOS or Windows, right? So that duality of having deep participation by the community in something that also has an anchor company that can go deep is kind of special. I think it's the fact that we have both of those that will let us get devices into market. You couldn't do that if you were just a community project. But it's also what will let us dual boot on hundreds of devices. You couldn't do that if you were just a company project. So that duality is really important.
So we have a question I think is going to be probably best directed towards Christian from Dank2501. Carriers have bloated Android. Can we guarantee that this is not going to happen with Ubuntu? I want a clean user experience. How are you not going to make this happen?
It's a great question. And again, I said before that we were going to focus on quality when we come out. And that's frankly one of the reasons why carriers and OEMs want to work with us. We have a fairly consistent way with how carriers and OEMs can develop rich experiences for their users without adding bloatware to the platform, and doing it in a systematic way. We offer a UI toolkit, around scopes in particular. So I think that's precisely the reason why they want to work with us. They've suffered from the bloatware issue as much as their users have. It hasn't enhanced their brands, it hasn't enhanced their business models, and it certainly hasn't enhanced the usage of their networks.
So next question I think is going to be probably best directed towards Rick from Green Chris. We talk a lot about convergence across phone, tablet, desktop, etc. When is it going to be ready? When is this going to be completed?
Ooh, well, so that's a really good question, and it's one that we discussed a lot. So I actually think of convergence as kind of a ladder that we climb, and at the first rung of the ladder is the same code runs on all different devices, right? So whether it's the core OS system or whether it's an application, you can write an application that runs on the phone, same application, same code, goes ahead and runs on your desktop. We've actually achieved that level of convergence in many cases. The next level of convergence, and I think most likely the one that this particular person is asking about, is when my device can turn into another device, like can my phone play the role of a desktop, for example. And that is something that we're actively developing. I hate to put a time frame on things like this because it then makes us late or early. When there's so much that's hard to predict and depends on so many factors outside our control. So I'll just say, I expect to see solid progress towards this in each of our successive 6-month release cycles, and I invite the person to come to UDS, come to talk to us on IRC, and participate in making that happen in a way that is meaningful to them, in the way that they want to see it happen. So that's my non-answer.
Never ask an engineering manager about when software is going to be delivered.
Indeed.
All right. So we've had a couple of people, Quermit and Jorik and some other people, and I think this is going to have asked a question that I think, again, is going to be a Christian question, which is, will these Ubuntu phones that we're talking about with Meizu and BQ, will they have the capability to transform into a workstation? People have seen Ubuntu for Android demonstrated at CES and other events. Will these phones have that capability?
I think Rick just answered the question. They are buying into a roadmap with us, so I would expect the first devices to be very compelling smartphones, not converged devices. But they are buying into our roadmap. This is a relationship where we're going to see a number of devices ranged by them, and when we're ready to ship devices that are the full converged experience, I'm sure they will be on the front line.
So we've also had a number of people who've asked questions about, is Ubuntu going to be focusing on these particular markets? For example, we had, let me find it, a question from, where is it? Paulavap, who asked about expanding into South America and other emerging markets. Christian, can you talk about your strategy in terms of which markets you want to focus on right now and where we see momentum?
Sure. I think the cheat sheet answer to that question is check out our carrier advisory group members and the markets and territories that they represent. Clearly, we've chosen carefully 2 launch partners that are very strong in guerrilla-type launches in 2 very specific markets. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't make those devices available in other markets. We certainly can and probably will. But right now, if you look at the carrier advisory group and that second phase of intensive launches, you'll find a hard time spotting geographical gaps. Africa, South America, North America, Europe, and most countries in Asia are actually very well represented.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're going to have 2 more. I think we've got time to get through 2 more questions. The first one is from Liam P. I think this is going to be one for Mark. So in addition to apps, how is Ubuntu Touch going to support other types of content distribution, things such as ringtones, wallpapers, video, music, etc., etc.? Mark, do you have any comments about the content strategy?
Sure. So there'll be 2 ways to get your content onto a device. One is to package it up in a click package, and so people will be able to pull it out of the Click Store, the App Store, and the other will be to expose your content as a scope, which means your content is then available directly from the home screen. Things like wallpapers and so on, you'll have to say that you want this particular piece of content, this image, to be a wallpaper for your device. So we won't package those up separately. Essentially, they'll just be images, and you can set any image to be your wallpaper.
Okay, great. I'm actually going to see if I can squeeze another couple of questions in here. One question is from rfrap, which is, do you think that I think this is for Mark as well, do you think that the Ubuntu Edge will ever exist? A lot of excitement around the Edge. Do you think we'll ever see one?
That was a labor of love, and the more time we spent on it, the more I really wanted it to happen, because it was an amazing device that pulled together essentially the future in the palm of your hands. We didn't get the mandate to make it in that round, but isn't it interesting how many of the things we said the future needed to include are showing up on other people's roadmaps? So Apple just snapped up 3 years worth of the supply of Sapphire screens from the company that we had engaged to make the screens for the Edge. Apple also has started describing their latest generation mobile CPUs as desktop class. So that's another thing that we said you needed to have in the Edge, is a desktop class CPU. And we're starting to see, the roadmaps for devices from Samsung and others that have the same amount of RAM that we were proposing to put in the Edge. So yes, I think that devices of that caliber are going to be in the market, and for better or worse, we are now focused purely on the software, making the software amazing for that kind of device. If you really want to go deep, look at Project Ara, which was part of the Motorola Labs, and it was a part that Google didn't sell to Lenovo. Project Ara is all about having a little personal computer that essentially doesn't have a screen, but you can attach it to a phone, and then it becomes a phone. Well, that would be exactly the sort of thing you'd want at the heart of a convergence strategy. So I think we're in exactly the right place doing the right stuff. We're building the software for a future convergent world. And all of the concepts that we mapped out in the Edge are going to happen. And with our community, I think we're building, it's the first time maybe we'll be able to have an open GNU Linux project which can be right at the front of a major wave in personal computing. So, the participation that we have is wonderful, hugely appreciated. And I think people who participate are going to have the feeling that they help build the future and break through for Linux in a way that nothing else has done.
And the final question, I think, that everyone's going to dip into on this one, I think. So this is from Rufus. There's many different attributes to Ubuntu for smartphones. There's scopes, there's the SDK, there's the apps, there's the dash, there's all of these different pieces that relate to it. Rufus wants to know what each person on this panel's favorite feature is. What's your favorite aspect? If you have to pick one, and apparently there's no cheating, I've been told. You have to pick one favorite part of Ubuntu for smartphones. What's it going to be? So why don't we start with you, Mark?
My favorite is in the build that we're taking to MWC is a piece of code that hasn't yet landed in the public image, not because it's being held back, just because it hasn't yet got through our very rigorous QA process, but it is the new experience for going back with the right edge on the phone, and it's beautiful. So it just feels like, you've got all these apps running, and you just go back, and there are all your apps, and you're totally in control. It's gorgeous. Of course, it helps that we're getting all of these new sexy apps, but I'm told that I only had one favorite feature. So for today, it is the new back edge experience, which is just gorgeous. And,
nice try, by the way. All right, Christian, what's your favorite feature?
It's easy. It's Scopes. Scopes is a game changer. It's what's creating these new beautiful experiences for users. It's what's allowing operators to finally make the most out of their networks. It's what's completely shifting the business model for OEMs. It's got to be Scopes.
Fantastic. And Rick, what's your favorite feature?
So, I don't know. I guess I can't mention image-based updates or talk about our continuous integration system. So if I had to pick one, I think I'll go with Click. So I think Click is just an elegant solution for long-standing suffering for application developers. They suffer no more. Just get your application. It takes, like using Click, it's literally takes 20 minutes to get your application from your desktop into the store, showing up on users' phones. I think that's probably my favorite for that reason.
Imagine that. Magic stuff. Jono, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I would actually build on Rick as well. I think that our app developer, the app developer on-ramp that we've built for Ubuntu, it's been a lot of work getting it together. There's lots of different pieces. There's Click packages. There's the App Store. There's the SDK. There's the API documentation. The developer website. I think that this is revolutionizing how easy it is for people to build not only apps and get them into Ubuntu, but consistent, well-designed apps and get them into Ubuntu as well. So, all right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks, Mark, Christian, Rick, for joining us today, and thank you everybody for dialing in. We've had a huge attendance. Bear in mind as well that you can find out more information about Ubuntu at ubuntu.com, and you can also find out about how to build apps for Ubuntu at developer.com. And we have lots of these video streams happening all the time with many different members of our community on ubuntuonair.com, which is a community-driven resource.
Jono, I just want to say the three of you guys are absolutely amazing. It's a privilege to work on this with you, and as are the 300 people in the channel and the 50 people who've contributed to Unity and the 150 people who've contributed apps. You know, this is how the future gets made. You guys are amazing. So thank you, and let's make it happen.
Fantastic. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.